Hello everyone. In this video we are going to see how to identify the designated ports. Okay, so far we saw how to identify the root switch, then we saw root ports. Now we have to find out the designated ports. That's the third step in the STP convergence process to identify the designated ports. A single designated port is to be identified for each segment. Okay, we have to identify a single designated port for each segment. Okay, this port is responsible for forwarding BPDUs and frames to that segment. Now, if two ports are equally capable of becoming a designated ports, which we will see in a while now, then there is a loop and one of the port will be placed in blocking state to eliminate that loop. The process of identifying the designated port is similar to root port. The lowest cumulative path cost leading to the root bridge is calculated, right? So far we identified that this is root, this is root, this is root port, this is root port. Now we need to identify the designated ports, okay, including the root switch. Okay, so the pattern is similar. The way we identified the root port based on the cumulative path, we have to identify the designated ports based on the cumulative path. Okay, so root port on root switch, ports on the root switch are never placed in blocking state. Okay, all the ports here, none of them are going to be in blocking state. Hence, the two ports, this port and this port, is already considered as designated ports. Okay, now as we know that each segment should have one designated port, doesn't matter if a root port already exists on that segment. The network segment between switch B and D, the network segment, let me just clean up this a little bit. Okay, the network segment between switch B and D, as well as the segment between switch C and E, which is this part, okay, both will require a designated port. Okay, port on switch D and E has already been identified as the root port, hence port on the B and C will become the designated port, right? So every segment will need one designated port. Now there is only two port available. Either we are talking about this port or we are talking about this port. Okay, this has already been converted into the root port, hence this becomes a designated port. Similarly here, this already is converted into root port and this becomes a designated port. Okay, now here comes the important part. Then the network segment between switch D and E, the segment we are talking about here, doesn't have a root port, right? The root port is here. Similarly, the root port is here. Because both have already identified root port, they are now looking for either designated port or the block port. As such, both ports on switch D and switch E are eligible to become designated ports. How? The designated ports are identified on the basis of cumulative path cost. This port has got the path cost to reach to switch A as 12, 4, the 4 and the 4 here, that goes to 12. Similarly, the switch E to reach to switch A, the path cost is 4, 4 and 4. There's a tie, right? There's a tie. That is where the lowest bridge ID comes into the picture. Okay, switch D has a priority of 500 and switch E has the default priority of 32768. Okay, this is where the priority comes in the picture. This has got as 500, this has got as 32768. Okay, hence the port on switch D will become the designated port. The port on switch E will be placed in a blocking state, hence we have stated as blocked, and this is designated port. How did we manage to find out? Well, purely on the basis of the cumulative path cost to root switch we identified. Okay, because we switch D and switch have a path cost of 12 to reach to root switch, whether you go from this direction to here or whether switch D goes from this direction to here, right? We had a tie, hence the lowest bridge ID is used as the tiebreaker. Switch D has a priority of 500 and switch E has a priority of 32768, hence the port on switch D becomes a designated port and the port on switch E will be placed in a blocking state. Now here's another twist. What if both of them have bridge ID, same bridge ID, right? In that case, the lowest MAC address is used as the tiebreaker. Whichever switch has got the lowest MAC address will become the designated port. So in any case, even if this would have been similar, like this is 5, if this is also 500, okay, then we would have done the election based on the MAC address. Even in that situation, this port would have become the designated port because this is lower MAC address compared to this one. All right. That's about it. Probably the only final logic I would say in terms of the designated port is that, you know, any port not elected as a root or designated port will be placed in a blocking state, right? So how many ports we did had? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Did I miss anything? Did I count it correctly? I hope so. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. Okay, makes sense, right? 5 switches, 10 ports, simple mathematics. So we have selected almost every port, either it is designated or root, designated or root, designated or root, designated, root, designated. So either the port is going to be a root port, designated port, but if it is none of them, then it is going to be a block port. Okay, so I hope you understand the logic, how to select the root switch, how to find out the root port, how to find out the designated port, and how to find out the block port. Okay, in the next video we will see about the VTP versions. Till then, thank you and have a good life. Thanks.